What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome to the MK Pugilism Boxing channel, where we talk all things boxing. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, put that on also you get notified of all the latest content as when we drop it on the channel. So let's get into it. Gervonta Tank Davis versus Ryan KINGRY Garcia. Very big fight that's going to be taking place this coming Saturday, just a few days out from today. This is a fight that is being lauded. They're saying celebrities are going to come to this fight. It is definitely a big fight. They're two of the biggest names in boxing at the moment, outside of, let's say, Canelo, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury. These are two guys which are definitely big names in the off-weight division. So let's get into a bit of a sense of this fight here. So as much as a lot of people are applauding this fight and lauding it as, oh, this is the best, and some are applauding the fact there's no belts on the line, because there are no belts on the line. In a sense, this fight, in my opinion at least, isn't necessarily about the best fighting the best. This really, when you look at it, is actually the two most popular lightweights facing off against each other, because there are other guys out there who have all of the belts in the division, who I would say have a claim to be the best. But these guys are, I would say, probably the two most popular lightweights in the division. So to me, going into this, as much as I give them credit, it's a good fight, this is kind of the most popular fight in each other. Both of these guys, they're undefeated. Both of these guys carry dynamite in both hands. Both can punch. Definitely, there's no belts on the line. And, you know, the thing that these guys have got in common, unfortunately, one of my sort of, as much as I like the fight, I have to be real about it. And, you know, the reality is that something both of these guys have got in common is that neither one of them has fought and beaten any of the other top lightweights out there. Like Kambosos, who was undisputed at that point, like Devin Haney, who is undisputed champion at this moment. In fact, one of the things we have to remember about this fight is that, for me, it kind of started when Garcia beat Luke Campbell by KO. He came back off of the floor, beat Luke Campbell by KO. Devin Haney was actually ringside, because by Garcia beating Luke Campbell, it was then his opportunity to take on Devin Haney, who was the champ at the time. But instead of going to Devin Haney, he immediately called out Gervonta Tank Davis. So he wanted to fight from a long time. And also, we look at the career of Tank Davis. He also hasn't fought the other best lightweights out there. He had an opportunity to face Lomachenko, who at a time was the best, you know, out there. But Gervonta and his team said, well, Lomachenko's trying to rush us. We don't have to rush our career. We don't have to fight him right now. We're not in any rush. We're young. We're this, we're that, the other. But the interesting thing is that was several years ago, and since then, he still hasn't fought the other best lightweights out there, guys like Teofimo Lopez, who had the belts. You know, Davis and Garcia, they're being applauded, and rightly so. They are two of the best lightweights. But we've got to also remember, my, you know, sort of gripe or rant about it is that going into this fight, I've got to say that for my money, I've got more respect for guys like Teofimo Lopez, George Kambosos Jr., and Devin Haney. Why? Because unlike Gervonta Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, those three guys have mixed it with one another and have actually competed for the top prizes in the division, thus sort of proving themselves as the best. And one, in the case of Devin Haney, and also you could say George Kambosos Jr., these guys, they became undisputed champions in the weight division. So as much as, yes, we respect this fight, but at the same time, if we're going to be real about it, we've got to remember that these guys have not fought the other top guys. You know, in Tank's case, he's been boxing long time, so why he hasn't done that, we don't know. But then, anyway, in terms of this weekend's fight, rant out the way, we've got to remember a few things. Now, going into this, we know that Ryan Garcia, in my view, of the two, deserves that bit more respect. because Ryan Garcia going into this fight had to agree to a lot of things that will be, at least on the surface level, look to be towards his detriment. Which is, first of all, he had to agree to the rematch clause, and the rematch clause is very much in Gervonta Tank Davis's favor. It all sort of favors him. So Garcia had to accept that. And then secondly, and more, which will be more detrimental to him, he agreed to the rehydration clause. Now, this is nothing new in boxing. I've seen these things over the years. And basically what this means is that they're fighting at the catch weight of 136 pounds, which is 1 pound above the lightweight limit of 135 pounds. But Ryan Garcia must not come into the fight at any higher weight than 146 pounds. So he's got that limit of 10 pounds. So not only, it's okay, admittedly, Garcia's fought at lightweight loads of time, but he's a growing lad and he's a big guy. So they've kind of handicapped Ryan Garcia going into this fight because he can't come in any heavier than, 10 pounds over the limit. And I find that interesting because there's been several times in Gervonta Tank Davis's career where he's missed the weight, where he's been overweight. So, and his excuse for this was, well, Ryan Garcia is a bigger fighter. I'm not going to let him come in at 160, this, that, or the other. But look, at the end of the day, if you're that confident about beating him, I don't think you should be putting that sort of stuff in there. You should want the man to be comfortable. You should want your opponent to be at his absolute best so that when you beat him, he has no excuse. Because now, to me, although, I don't agree with excuses, but to me, going into this now, Ryan Garcia's kind of got this inbuilt excuse if he wants to be petty. If he goes in there and loses, even if he gets knocked out or he gets hurt or he gets beat on points or however it happens, he can always turn around and say, well, look, I'm the guy that agreed to all these demands, rematch clause in this guy's favor, rehydration clause, which is draining me. And I think it's a very real possibility that Garcia might be actually drained going into this because this is something that can happen in boxing. Guys get down to the weight and they want to be at top of the weight. So they're big and they drain themselves down and then they just rehydrate. But he won't have the opportunity to do that. And also we got to consider in Gervonta Davis's case that he's demanding for this clause, this rehydration clause. But when you look back in his career, a few years ago, he fought a guy called Mario Barrios, who was a guy that was moving up to 140 pounds. Tank Davis had no problem fighting Barrios at 140 pounds. There was no talk of this rehydration clause for Mario Barrios, who was a lesser fighter, not as good as Luke Campbell. But it's funny how he had no such clause for Barrios, but when it comes to a guy around his sort of level, he puts these stipulations in to sort of weaken the opponent. To me, I'm not a fan of these rehydration clauses. I think, let the guys be at their best as long as they can make the weight at the weigh-in. That's it. I don't see the problem. But I think knowing these sort of factors, to me, I ever so slightly, I think it's kind of 50-55, but I slightly, knowing these factors of the weight clauses and all this, I slightly favor Gervonta Davis going into this one, particularly due to that reason, that rehydration clause. I think there's a very real possibility that this could disadvantage and weaken Ryan Garcia to some point. It may not weaken him, and I hope it doesn't. I hope he is at his best, but I think there's a very real possibility that having this rehydration thing could weaken him going into this. So you've got to give a edge in that department, at least, to Tank Davis. I think how this fight will go is that I'm expecting Garcia to start the faster. Gervonta Tank Davis, he likes to take a look at his opponents. and he sort of comes on strong later in the fight. So I'm expecting that will be the case going into this, that Garcia will start faster. I expect that Garcia will win a good load of the early rounds. I think he'll just start faster and throw his fast combinations and everything. And I think Gervonta Davis will have to play catch up in this fight. I think his part of the fight will be sort of the latter portion, the latter rounds, where he may come on stronger. Tank, he's got the reputation of being a beast, and that's because of his punching power. He's a genuine puncher. But when we look at his fights, when he tends to go up against good opposition, and you could even include in this the smaller fighter like Yuriokis Gamboa, as much as he's got this puncher's reputation, he does tend to his fights do tend to go on long. It's only when he fights the lesser opposition, guys like Rolly Romero, those fights tend to end early because those guys walk onto his punches. And Leo Santa Cruz, they give him credit for that win, but at the end of the day, Leo Santa Cruz is a much smaller guy and a lighter guy, so he's the man coming up. And so beating him, yes, great knockout, but I can't really give much credit because he's not one of your lightweight peers. So how much credit can we give? And he tends to fight the way Davis fights. He's a puncher, but he's a counter puncher. And what he looks for in the fights is he's always looking for that perfect shot. And he's always Davis is a guy that's very careful about when he launches and when he throws the power shots. And he's accurate and crisp. And he's a very sharp fighter. So he is a puncher, but he's not a reckless puncher. He's not a guy that just goes in all guns blazing. He's a guy that looks to line you up for that perfect left hand, for that perfect shot. So that's kind of the way he fights. So as much as he's got that puncher's reputation, I see this fight going on quite long. I think overall, as much as I ever so slightly lean towards Davis, because I think Davis is a little bit more tidy, and Garcia's got this thing where he does sometimes leave his chin up in the air. So I think if that history repeats itself of Garcia sort of boxing quite tall and his head being quite upright and all if he does do those sorts of mistakes as he has in the past, I kind of see it as slightly in Davis's favor. But if Ryan Garcia can tighten up his defenses and be a bit sharper and keep Tank on the end of his shots, and if he can box long, use a good jab and keep Gervonta Davis at bay as Davis sort of waits for that perfect shot. If he can smother him when he comes in, keep him at bay with the long shots and not allow him to get in, and not be foolish enough to sort of get into Gervonta Davis's wheelhouse up close and personal and let him land that perfect shot. If he can keep it long, then Garcia can definitely win it. He can definitely outbox Tank Davis, but I get a feeling that the emotions might get involved and he might just get a bit carried away, and maybe Tank can sort of walk him onto a good shot. And I see this as it is basically a 50-50 depending on what you like. And a lot of that is down to the fact that Tank, very good and very sharp, but he does start slow, and he can be outboxed, and he can lose a lot of rounds by the fact that he sort of waits for that perfect shot. And then you got the factor with Garcia that sometimes his chin is hanging up in the air and that sort of thing. So for me, it is very 50-50. And I think it will be explosive, but I think this fight will go to points, and it is 50-50. I think slightly you got to go with Davis. He's mixed with the slightly better opposition as a pro and everything. So he's had the better, Gervonta Davis has had the better competition. But Luke Campbell is a very live underdog. And when I say I favor Tank Davis, I'm literally talking 55-45 or 51-40. It's really, really a slight edge. it's one of those very, very slight edge towards him, because I can definitely see ways that Garcia can just keep it long, fast combinations, keep Davis on the outside for 12 rounds, outbox him and win. But then you've got Davis, who's got the knack of catching you with a big shot and walking, good counter punching ability. So it is a 50-50, but let me know what you guys think about this fight. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, comment in the comment section below. And until next time, it's MKO Pugilism over and out. See you next one.